So Paul, I wonder if we can kick off by giving us an idea of how strong consumer awareness is of the service apartment sector in your part of the world, and also where you see your next key markets over the next 3 to 5 years, places that you want to either strengthen your position or move into.
Okay. Well, the market is now acknowledged service apartment as a true segment within the accommodation industry, and there's a lot more players now in terms of users wanting to be part of that. It's and what's happening is that with that demand is allowing us to create, well, the demand's actually asking for more supply, so hence we have a lot of growth. Mm-hmm. And the important thing for growth is that it's not your normal growth, it's just the city centres, it's the secondary cities, the growth outside your cities in your regional areas is happening. Mm-hmm. And what we've seen is that as the market has acknowledged the product that's meeting their needs for travel, they're asking for these different locations. There's no other properties there. Service apartments being new, you can't just take over an existing service apartment and brand it. You've literally got to build it. So most of them are greenfields. Mm-hmm. Our opportunity for growth lies, a lot of it's still in Australia. Our pipeline is that we'll open within Australia and New Zealand in the next 12 months, which are under construction. There's 12 properties that will open. We have 45 in the pipeline throughout Australia within the next 4 years. Mm-hmm. And that's just meeting current demand. But what we're looking at from a group's perspective is the opportunities that lie outside our Australasian market. And I think over 25 years you've been able to establish a model that works, and it's a transportable model, so it can come elsewhere. So we're now analysing the demand from corporates that we know that do business in other parts of the world, understanding the demographics of those markets, and hopefully we can move into these locations and bring the brand over, but not just from a one property perspective, looking at for a rollout. So how can we roll out 10 or 15 properties if we were to come to the UK? And what are the stakeholders, who are the stakeholders that we need to help us grow into these markets?
Okay. In your session earlier, you mentioned that your consumer base is predominantly corporate. Are you seeing leisure travel eating into that, or are you seeing your corporate customers extending their stays to involve families and leisure?
I think that a lot of that becomes with the brand. I mean, we stayed, when I developed the group initially, I wanted the corporate market because sometimes destinations become out of favour, and if you've got a property there, and sometimes that market's not going to be too good. But what we're finding is that there's a growing leisure market because people now they're a lot more affluent, and I take this from a global perspective. I know we're still seeing some hard times, but there's a lot of cash out there. There's still a lot of what we term the baby boomers, people in the 50s and 60s that are travelling around. So there's more people travelling around looking for that leisure destination. So the leisure market is growing, but we've been staying very core to that 80% corporate market and using the leisure market to fill up the balance of the year, because you will get your highs and lows with corporates. Mm-hmm. But the leisure market actually, when you look at service apartments, really started from leisure because it became an affordable product for you and your family to go on holiday. You didn't have to use a restaurant downstairs in a hotel, and if you're staying in a hotel you typically needed 2 rooms. Here you can take a 2-bedroom apartment, have it there for a week, look after yourself, get your groceries as you would at home, and enjoy the destination.
Mm-hmm. We touched on consumer awareness earlier. How in tune is the investor community in Australasia with your model? Are they comfortable with it? Are they happy to invest in it, or do they take some persuading at the moment?
But I think what we're finding is that we spend a lot of time with the financiers, so getting them to understand the model, and they're very basically economic focused. So as long as there's a return for the bank and they're comfortable with the debt repayments, the return on investment, it's working well. I think where we struggle in Australia is that, or Australasia, we're still a young country, and for the big players that are the big investors in hotel brands, really haven't come to Australia. So where there's been some local institutions that have owned hotels, they've sold out, but they haven't bought back in. What we're seeing in Australia now is mature capital players that are coming in from the Middle East, they're coming from the Asian markets, they're coming from the North American markets. They understand the product, and they're our biggest owners, like Accor being a big player. They're coming in with their investor base, and a lot of it's coming out of Singapore, and they're owning the properties, which is sad in some way that we can't use our own Australian institutions that do have a lot of money. that they should be also investing in this asset class. But I think over time, as we educate that market in terms of what is this asset class, and they get a lot more governance around it and understanding, I think that would be but it's still a difficult part. If there's any frustration, it would be getting that market to understand our product.
That's great, wonderful. Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much.